There we go. All right, we're recording. Okay, couple things. A couple things I want to talk about the musculoskeletal terms quiz that is on. It's open on Thursday, and then we have it on between Thursday and Saturday. So let me pull this up real quick. Oh wait, the other thing I have to show you. Shoot, if you go into helpful resources, look what I found. The online version of this textbook. Because I hate carrying it around. It is so heavy.
Are you sure we have access to that?
Huh?
We have access?
I think if you had the Pearson, if you applied for that, the A&P, like you said,
Yeah.
you have it then.
On there
do.
though? Oh, see, I always have to go to Pearson for it.
I don't know, but it's now downloaded, so
That's
it's
cool.
table of contents. Look, you can get everything. Because for me, because I don't have anywhere I can store things here. I always have to bring it, and it's a heavy book. So anyway, I figured out a way to download the online access, so you guys can now have it anywhere. I mean, I still like if I'm sitting at a desk or I'm sitting at school, I like a real book in front of me. But if I'm here and I'm traveling back and forth between home and here, and I just need to pull up something real quick, I like to have online access. So that's there now for you. Okay, so now let's talk about that musculoskeletal terms. I hope when I sent out that message that it made sense. No? No. Of where it was? Did you find where
Well,
it
I
was?
found this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. That's okay. We're going to go over this stuff. Where did that download?
It didn't. You have to click it.
Yeah, you have to say open, save.
Oh, so at the bottom, click open.
Oh, right here. Thank you. There we go. All right. These are all things that, if we were actually in the muscular system, these are all things that we would take time to go over as a class. Unfortunately, because the way the lab is set up and we're doing muscles now, these are some things that they want to quiz you on. So what I've done is I have some handouts for you that I think will help after I kind of talk about these things. So bone markings, luckily, we did those in lab last week. We started with those. In your lab book, there's a guide to those bone markings, but I have also printed off a couple of pictures for you that I use in high school that are pictures with the bone markings labeled on here, so just to make it a little bit easier for you to get to know them, okay? So that stuff we've kind of already done, but of course more practice is always better. The next thing is the different types of joints. So when you think of joints and you think of elbows and knees and shoulders and hips and all that, those are called diarthrotic joints. Sometimes they're also called synovial joints because they're lined with the synovial membrane. And on the quiz, they want you to know a little bit about some of those joints, plus what kind of movements they do. And so pages 270, 271, 274 to 276, you're going to see those joints, which, by the way, I just printed out a picture of you just to show you like where a ball and socket joint is, where a hinge joint is, stuff like that. But then you also need to know the movements. So did I have that? I did not have that one pulled up yet. Let me go in here real quick. Pages, what does that say? 2 something?
270. or do you want the first page? 184.
No, not that one.
Oh,
So 270 then will talk about diarthroses or those synovial joints, and then these pictures show you the actions. So what does flexion mean? What does extension mean? And usually these actions are in pairs. So flexion is decreasing the angle between two bones. So like when I do this, I'm flexing my arms, I'm decreasing the angle between my two lower arm bones and the humerus. Now extension is increasing the angle. Okay, so that's flex and extend. You can also hyperextend. So actually with your head, this is flexion, this is extension, that's hyperextension. Okay? Most places we don't want to do that with our head, it's not a big deal. Abduction and adduction. If you think of somebody is abducting you, what are they doing? Taking you away. So abduction is taking away from the midline of the body. Adduction, you're going to add it back to the body. So this is adduction. So abduction and adduction. So those are just some pretty common joint movements that you'll need to take a little bit of time to do. This is, and you can do abduction and adduction with your hand as well. Circumduction, if you are going to draw a circle on the board, that is circumduction. Lateral and medial rotation, you can do with your arm. Rotation, you can do with your head. I know they don't have any others. When you open your jaw like this, that's depression.
that's on page.
That's depression. And then you raise it back up, and that's elevation. So you are going to, and this quiz, I think there are only 14 questions, multiple choice matching. And I thought what I would do Wednesday, since it doesn't open until Thursday, is we'd play a little review game on Wednesday. How do you feel about playing a little review game on
Yeah,
Wednesday?
because do you know how many, I did note cards for all this?
Yeah.
Over the weekend, there's over 100 note
Yeah,
cards.
I know. We can play a little review game.
For 14 questions.
Yep, we'll play a little review game. So I'm just kind of trying to give you a sense of what all is going to be on there. And then, there it is. So this is bone markings. There's all those joints plus the movements. By the way, you see this right here, this little term here, and I have it on the paper that I ran off for you. I highlighted this, although it's black and white, but you can tell it's highlighted. Most anterior muscles flex, most posterior muscles extend, most medial muscles adduct, most lateral muscles abduct. You will definitely want to know that for the quiz. And then the last thing is, or not the last thing exactly, but these terms right here. Why can't I get this to
Get bigger?
Oh, there we go. It's okay. These terms all have to do with muscles and where they hook, basically, where they hook on each end. So the muscles that we are learning in lab last week and for the next few weeks, for each one of those, now that you kind of know where they are, for each one of those, you're going to have to know the origin, the insertion, and the action. Well, first of all, you don't need that for this quiz, but you need to know what origin is, what insertion is, and what action is. And so on page 339 to 341, that's all these, but I'm going to tell you just kind of real briefly what they are. If you think of a muscle, its job is to move bones, all right? So it's going to be attached to one end that doesn't move and one end that does move. So the origin of a muscle is the bone that doesn't move. The insertion of a muscle is the bone or bones that do move. So your biceps job is to flex your lower arm like this. Well, that bicep is attached all the way up here at your scapula and clavicle. Those aren't moving. What's moving? Your radius and your ulna. So the origin is the muscle that, or the bone that doesn't move. The insertion is the bone that does do, and what it's doing is the action. So what is it? It's flexing. Okay. That part you won't need to know until we get the specifics. You won't need to know until we get to the lab practical. But for this coming quiz, you just need to know the definitions of those.
So the action
Is what it does. Flex, extend, abduct, adduct, circumduct, elevate, depress. It's what it sounds like, what it does. Now, muscles don't work alone. Muscles, most of the time, work in groups. And when one muscle contracts, another muscle, or maybe even two muscles, need to relax. So the main muscle in an action is called the prime mover. It's the one that does most of the work. So when I do this motion, my biceps brachii is my prime mover. It's doing most of the work. The prime mover can also be called an agonist. Make sure you don't mix up the term agonist and antagonist. They look really similar, and if you go too fast, you're going to mix them up. Prime mover can also be called an agonist. So when I flex my lower arm, the biceps brachii is the one doing most of the work. It's the prime mover. Now, it has helpers, and helpers are synergists. And in this case, the synergist is brachialis, which is on either side of your biceps. Now, again, you won't need the specifics for this first quiz, but if it helps you to understand what a synergist is, you can do that. And then think about, if you put your hand, put your fingers on your bicep, put your thumb on your tricep, and then flex your arm. Okay, what's your bicep doing?
It's pretty bad.
I feel your pain on that one.
I don't feel a muscle.
It's contracting. It's contracting. Okay? But now extend it. Now what's contracting? Your tricep. So during flexing, the bicep is the prime mover, the brachialis are the synergist. So what's relaxing while the prime mover is contracting? Your triceps. So that is what we call the antagonist. It relaxes while the prime mover contracts. Now, if I'm extending, they switch jobs. Now the triceps is the prime mover, and the bicep would be the antagonist. And the brachialis, I think, is just another antagonist. I don't think there is a helper. A fixator keeps, I do believe it keeps bones in place. I'm going to be incredibly honest with you. I forgot to look up what a fixator is because I've never used that term before. So there you go. And I don't think it's on the quiz anyway. Look, what is it, Rachel? Did you see it?
That's page 349.
Yeah, that one I don't know off the top of my head.
It's a synergist that exists in an agonist by preventing movement.
Oh, yeah, so it stabilizes the muscle. It keeps something else from moving. Thank you. I figured it had to do something with fixing. Thank you very much. So it's going to keep something else from moving. Okay, the last thing you need to look at then is on page 343. And this is all about how are muscles named. Now, muscle naming is actually kind of cool. Once you get the general gist of it, 343. It makes a lot of sense. Okay. So, for instance, sometimes muscles are named because of the part of the body that they're in. The rectus abdominis is in your abdomen. The occipitalis is attached to your occipital bone. Your temporalis is attached to your temporal bone. So sometimes they're simply that easy. Position, direction. So your tibialis anterior, which is one of the muscles that we were looking at last week, it's on the front of your leg. Okay, anterior meaning it's on the front of your leg. Your obliques. Your obliques, any muscle that is an oblique goes at an angle. Transverse means your transverse abdominis literally goes horizontal. It goes like this. So sometimes they're named according to where they are. Sometimes they're named according to how many origins they have. So for instance, your biceps brachii has 2 origins, 2 places that it's attached. Your triceps brachii has 3 places. So sometimes that's really simple. So you also have a biceps femoris, 2 different parts of the body. Think about this, biceps femoris. How many origins does it have? 2. And what bone would it be attached to? Your femur. Yeah, so once you kind of get the hang of it, some of these muscles aren't quite so bad. Sometimes they're named for their shape. So do you know what you call your shoulder muscles? These are your deltoids. Do you know the Greek alphabet? Alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, zeta, eta. I know the whole alphabet. I won't bore you with it. Delta, what shape is a delta? A triangle. Your deltoid is named for a delta, for the shape of a delta. So sometimes they're named according to shape. We also have one in your back. There's what we call the Christmas tree muscle. It's your rhomboid because they literally go like this and look like how people that can't draw Christmas trees. Which that would be me, people that can't draw. Yeah, so sometimes they're named according to their shape. These are the movements. This will help you. Abductor, move away, adductor 2. And then there are some muscles that literally are named just for some weird reason. Doesn't follow any of the other rules. Like the buccinator's one of my high school kids' favorite ones because I always call it the blowing muscle. So you know what I'm saying? They think it's funny. The sartorius we looked at, it's like a tailor. I have absolutely no idea why it's called like a tailor, not a clue. But this will help you kind of get used to how muscles are named. Oh, here's another one. There is a muscle called the flexor carpi ulnaris. Okay, think about those 3 words. Flexor, carpi, ulnaris. First of all, tell me what it does. It flexes. And then what 2 bones is it attached to?
The wrist and all.
Your carpals and your ulna. So yeah, what's it do? It flexes your wrist. See how easy that is once you kind of start getting the hang of it? Yeah, so muscles aren't nearly as bad as they initially seem. What did you want to ask?
How do you pronounce the B one?
Buccinator.
Okay, buccinator. So in high school, I had to take head and neck anatomy to get my dental assisting,
Mm-hmm.
and we always called it the baconator. You have
Oh,
to open
yeah.
up your mouth so big.
Oh, that's funny. Oh, that's a good one. I like that one. That's good. Oh, here's another. So, you know how I said some are named by shape? Orbicularis. The word orbicularis, what root word pops into your head? Orbit, which means to
Circle.
go around, or circle. Yeah, you've got the orbicularis oculi, which goes around your eye. It's the winking and the blinking one. And then you have the orbicularis oris, which goes around your mouth. You know what it is? What its nickname is? It's the kissing muscle because it allows you to pucker. So yeah, you can imagine high school boys. We have a really good time with this. Yeah, we have the kissing muscle, we have the blowing muscle, all those good things. So muscles are really, when you get used to it, not all that awful. Okay? So I didn't give these to you guys yet, did I? No, I did not. All right. So these are just some things that I thought might help you. If you want to trash them, feel free to trash them. I did highlight a couple of, although they don't really look highlighted anymore. But I highlighted in the first column, most anterior muscles flex, most posterior muscles extend, most medial muscles adduct, most lateral muscles abduct. And then underneath that with the origin, insertion, action, that's, believe it or not, was highlighted in blue. It sure doesn't look blue now, but there are some questions on the quiz about that. Okay? And then you've got the pictures just to kind of help you with the bone markings, which will not only help for this quiz, but also for lab. Okay? Good? And then Wednesday we'll take some time. I've got a couple of review game sites that I use in class, so in high school, so I will make up a review game between now and Wednesday, and we'll play, probably play Kahoot. If you've ever heard of Kahoot. Have you ever, you know Kahoot? Everybody knows Kahoot? Kahoot, no, Kahoot's fun.
You don't know Kahoot? We use it in LPN school.
Yeah, we'll do Kahoot.
It's a race.
If I remember, I might even, like bring a prize or something, like candy, something. We'll see. Okay. Any questions on that? Okay, so hopefully that will help you between now and then Wednesday. All right, so now we need to move into cells. Remember, molecules make up cells, cells make up tissues, tissues make up organs, so on and so forth. So for whatever reason, in this class we did tissues before cells. Don't know why. That must have to do with lab. Do you remember much about cells? Do you know organelles? Do you know... Remember much or no?
Yes.
Yes, no, maybe so? Okay. If I go too fast, just holla, and I'll slow down. All right. Let me... No, I don't want to close all. No, let's just minimize that. I don't want that. Where's my notes? There we go. Okay, so this is chapter 3, I do believe, and it's all about cells. Now, this says, before we go on, let's double check that you remember this stuff. So we'll see how much of this you remember. List and describe the levels of organization is what I just did. Molecules make it, atoms make up molecules, molecules make up cells, cells make up tissues, tissues make up organs, organs make up systems, systems make up an organism. Do you remember the 4 organic compounds and the monomers of each, perchance?
Carbon. There's 2 over here.
Are there?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, there are. Oh, they're both red. That's okay. Okay, so let's start with the 4 molecules. What's the first molecule that we all like to eat? And it, carbohydrates, yeah. Carbohydrates, then what's the next molecule? Next organic molecule. There are 4 of them.
Oh, lipids.
Lipids.
Oh, sweet.
What's the next one?
Enzyme.
Mm-mm. Proteins? Ringing a bell?
And
No. They're like, no, not at all.
is there acids?
Nucleic acids.
Good job.
Okay. And then they each have, remember, these are big molecules. They each have little units that go together to make them. Do you remember what the little units that go together to make up carbohydrates are called? Probably not, so I'll just tell you. Monosaccharides.
Oh.
Ringing a bell?
Yes.
How about lipids?
Polysaccharide.
No.
Anything
Anything
with
with
glycerides? No?
Anything with saccharide is a carbohydrate. Don't ever put anything saccharide anywhere other than a carbohydrate. Lipids have 2. Remember, lipids are fats. So, no, triglycerides are a type of lipid.
Oh.
Fatty acids and glycerol. Let's see, we're going to play a review game before the next exam, too.
Please.
Proteins. 2 words begin with A's. Amino acids. Nucleic acids are like DNA and RNA. Do you remember the little unit that goes together to make those? I drew it. It's got a sugar, a phosphate, and a nitrogen base. Begins with an N. Nucleotide. That's not helpful.
I know.
My exam from like last semester that I took. That's what I was like, oh, if it goes in order.
Okay. Describe the structure of a phospholipid. Do you remember water loving and water fearing?
Yeah.
Hydro. Water loving is hydrophilic,
Phil.
and water fearing is
Hydrophobic.
hydrophobic. Right. So I'm keeping over here because this way I can record and people can see.
They're like tentacles facing each other.
They are tentacles facing each other. We've got water loving and water fearing. Hydrophilic, hydrophobic.
And it doesn't let it pass. Right?
Water? Oh, it does. We haven't gotten there yet. Don't
Oh.
worry about it. Just worry about what hydrophilic and hydrophobic means. What's the function of an enzyme?
To break down.
Technically, yes, but there's more of a generic. There's a generic explanation of an enzyme. An enzyme changes the rate of a chemical reaction. Enzymes change the rate of a chemical reaction. It can either speed it up or slow it down. Usually they speed it up. So, like, before I came, I had a bacon tomato sandwich. Okay? So, there are carbohydrases, which are enzymes, which are speeding up my body breaking down the carbohydrates. There is also a protease, which is speeding up my body's reaction to break down the protein in the bacon, as well as lipases, because we all know that bacon is very fatty, but it was yummy. And so those lipases are speeding up my body's reaction to break down the lipids or the fats. Okay? Okay. Discuss the importance of glucose. Why is glucose important? It does fuel your body. Yeah. Yeah. Carbohydrates are your body's main source of energy. And so carbohydrates need to get broken down into the smallest monosaccharide there is, which is glucose, so that then your cells can get energy out of that glucose. And so in our discussion of cells, we'll talk about that process, which is cellular respiration. Okay? Good? Moving on. Great. Cells, basic unit of life. Cytology is the study of cells. Sorry. Here's, how many of you have to wear a mask all day long?
Me.
Oh my gosh. By this time of day, do your ears hurt?
Yes.
Oh,
no,
my-
not with this
Oh,
mic,
my
but
ears hurt.
My nose gets sick.
Yeah, my ears hurt. So anyway, cytology is the study of cells. All cells look different. Like, some are round, some are long, some are small, some are big. You know that one muscle cell, for instance, can literally go from the top of your spine down to your butt. And it's a muscle fiber, which is the same thing as a muscle cell. And they all have all different jobs all over your body. In our body, we have two basic kinds of cells, sex cells, eggs and sperm. Somatic cells, the prefix soma means body. Anytime you see soma, it means body. So everything else in your body except for eggs and sperm are called somatic cells. Skin cells, bone cells, blood cells, anything is a somatic cell. These next few slides just literally show pictures of how different looking and diverse all different types of cells are. You can go ooh, ah, if you would like. Ooh, ah, there you go. That's good. Okay, way back from high school, do you remember anything called the cell theory? Okay, so there were all these scientists back in like the 1600s and 1700s. People, do you know what spontaneous generation is? You ever heard of spontaneous?
That's the flies in the magazine.
Yes! So way back in the 1600s, people used to think that living things could come from non-living things. Well, that's because they would put a piece of meat out on a counter, not covered or anything, and then like a couple days later, these flies would show up. Well, so they thought, ooh, we've got these living things coming from this non-living piece of meat, which we all know is not what happens. And so these guys called Hooke and Schleiden and Schwann and Matthias and all these scientists all got their research together, and they said, okay, we need to let the world know that typically it's 3 things about cells. Your textbook does 4. And they put them all together and they refer to it as the cell theory. And the first one is every living thing is made of cells. Sometimes we just say cells are the basic unit of life. All cells come from pre-existing cells. You can't get a new cell without a previous cell. It doesn't just show up out of your desk. All cells come from previously existing cells. Cells are the smallest unit that can perform any kind of a physiological function in a living organism. If there's no cell, there's no life. There's no physiological function. And then each cell, remember how we've talked about homeostasis, and we've talked about it in the whole? Well, each cell tries to maintain its own homeostasis or stable internal environment as well. So you put all those things together, and they make up what is referred to as the cell theory. All cells, regardless of whether we are talking about a bacteria, a cell from a fish, a cell from a piece of grass, a cell from us, all cells have 3 parts in common. All cells have a cell membrane. Cell membranes are also referred to as plasma membrane. It's the same thing. Different textbooks use different terms. Just be aware that on tests you may see cell membrane, you may see plasma membrane. All cells have cytoplasm. All cells have a nucleus, with the exception of bacteria. We'll get to that later. Do you know the difference between a cell membrane and a cell wall?
Cell membrane is permeable.
Yeah, cell walls are too, but where do you find, do we have cell walls?
No.
No,
Only plants.
and bacteria.
Oh,
Yeah.
We are.
So I have to tell you this story. In my CCP class that I'm teaching at Marlington right now, we're doing the same thing. Different textbook, of course. So it's like I have to teach the same thing out of 2 different textbooks. And I went in and I was looking at their first exam. It's going to be over cells. And the professor that made it up had a wrong answer in there because it's a multiple choice. All cells have what 3 things in common? His answer said cell wall, which is not true because we don't have a cell wall. But plants have both a cell wall and a cell membrane. The bacteria that have cell walls also have a cell membrane. So all living cells, with the exception of bacteria, have cell membranes. It's only certain ones that have cell walls. So I thought it was interesting that he had the wrong answer on there. Part of me's like, I should tell him, and then I'm like, that's probably very presumptuous of me. He'll figure it out. And then all living cells have cytoplasm. So I always think of cytoplasm as like Jell-O, and then the organelles in your cell with sitting in the Jell-O.
You love Jell-O.
I do. I most of my really good analogies have to do with food. So, which is why I'm a short, fat, round, middle-aged woman. So, cytoplasm actually has 2 parts to it. Cytosol is a little more liquidy. So did you ever leave Jell-O sit out a little bit and it's warm and it starts to liquefy? That's kind of the way cytoplasm is. That liquidy part is cytosol. And then the organelles would be whatever the organelles that are sitting in there. Like if you had Jell-O with bananas in it, the organelles would be the bananas.
It changed.
Oh, I forgot about the... Oh. Sorry. And then the nucleus, we'll get to the nucleus in more detail in a little bit. But that's where all your genetic information is. It's kind of like the control center of your cell. Okay? So all cells have these 3 things in common. This is just a general picture of an animal cell with all the different parts that we're going to talk about listed that you can refer back to as need be. Okay. Questions so far? All right. The cell membrane has all kinds of functions. One, it's a physical barrier, which means it's going to let some things in and not other things. And it will control what things come in and what things go out. There are certain things that it will not let into the cell, and there are certain things that it will not let out. So for instance, the membrane around your nucleus, which is very similar to a cell membrane, won't let your DNA out. It'll let other things in and other things out, but it won't let your DNA out. Cell membranes are sensitive to the environment, meaning there are all these, every time we see a picture, we draw a cell, we just draw this line. Well, cell membranes are actually kind of complicated. They've got proteins embedded in there, they've got cholesterol embedded in there, they've got channels that are going to let things go in and out, and they have receptors. And those receptors are very sensitive to things like changes in pH. Remember we talked about pH? And your body needs to be within a certain range of pH. Well, if your cells recognize that the pH in your body is too high or too low, that cell is going to start to shut down. So it's got all these sensors all over it to help maintain homeostasis. Some cell membranes also help. Wrong way. There we go. Connections between cells. So for instance, the cells that make up your skin are tightly packed together. So those cell membranes will be connected by kind of a little biological glue. And then they can communicate with each other as well. If you think about neurons, which are in your brain and spinal cord, they're big individual cells, but they have these little tentacles that come off of them and connect to the other neurons so that they can talk to each other. So these are all the different functions that cell membranes have. Good? Maybe still need this? Good. Moving on. All right. We talked about this before, that cell membrane, one of the biggest things about it is this phospholipid bilayer. 42% of the weight of any cell comes from the cell membrane, this phospholipid bilayer. And I feel like we've talked about this a million times, the hydrophilic heads and the hydrophobic tails, so I'm not going to waste your time to go over it again. Remember, hydrophilic, water-loving, hydrophobic, water-fearing. Okay, so I won't do that again. We've already done that. This is actually the kind of the makeup of a cell membrane, and you can see there's the hydrophilic heads, hydrophobic tails. These are all channels that we'll talk about later on, what all happens here. We've got, where are the cholesterol molecules? Maybe they're not on there, but there's
Yes, they are, right, the left.
Oh yeah, there they are. Cholesterol molecules in here. This would be good cholesterol, not bad cholesterol. Actually give the cell membrane some stability. Look at all of these. These are all markers on here. Some of them will say, hi, I belong to Rachel, or hi, I am a nerve cell. So some of them are like name tags. And then glycolipids we'll get to in just a second. So it's a very complex layer, that cell membrane. 55% of that cell membrane are these two kinds of proteins. So if you look back here, 42% is the phospholipid bilayer. 55% are these proteins, and there's two separate proteins. There's what we call integral proteins and peripheral proteins. I'm going to go back to the picture for just a second. Integral proteins are like this. If you take these out of the cell membrane, it's going to destroy the cell. Peripheral proteins can be removed. They would have a different function than these. But like these integral proteins, these are channels that allow things like glucose to go in and out of the cell. You take those out and the cell's destroyed. Some of the other proteins, those peripheral proteins kind of on the outside, if you get rid of them, it'll be fine. Cell might not function as well, but you can get rid of them. So the integral proteins cannot be removed without damaging the membrane. Peripheral proteins bind to inner and outer surfaces. They can be removed easily. going backwards? I am. There we go. Those proteins, the integral proteins and the peripheral proteins, come in with four different functions. The first one are the anchoring proteins. These are what are going to attach the cell membrane to other structures. It'll stabilize it. So, for instance, the cells that make up your skin, okay, in your epidermis and your dermis, they need to be anchored to other cells so that they can communicate with each other, and you want your epidermal cells to be a nice tight layer. We don't want any spaces between. So anchoring proteins would do that. Remember how I said some of these cells will also have name tags on them, protein name tags? Some of them, we call those recognition proteins. This is how your immune system knows whether the cell it's looking at is supposed to be there or not supposed to be there. This is where you run into a problem with people who have transplants. You know, your cells all have a recognition protein on them that says, hi, I belong to me. Well, if one of you was to give me a kidney, then what would happen is my body would see a different name tag on there. And it would say, well, you're not supposed to be here. And so your body would fight against it, which is why all of those transplant patients have to take immunosuppressants so that your body can't read that protein.
Do they have to take them forever? Or
Yep.
does your body eventually get used to it?
Forever. Yeah. Yeah. Enzymes are a different kind of protein. We've talked about enzymes before. These are catalysts in your body, speed up, slow down the rate of a chemical reaction. And then receptor proteins, so along your cell membrane, things are going in and out of your cell membrane all the time. Bless you. Receptor membranes are specific to, let's say, receiving glucose. And all right, glucose, I'm going to receive you, and then I'm going to take you into the cell. This particular toxin, there's no receptor on here. There's no protein to receive you. You can't come in. So these receptor proteins are literally sensitive to individual different kinds of molecules that will come into the cell. So when you look back at this picture, when I said there's all these different kinds of proteins, they all have different jobs. And it always amazes me who is so smart to figure all that out. I would love, that stuff amazes me. I just can't even imagine how big that person's brain was. Okay. To that. Okay, and now there's two more. Carrier proteins and then those channels. There are some molecules that can just fit through the cell membrane, no problem. But then there are some molecules that are literally too big to fit through the cell membrane, but yet you want them to come in. So they need help. They need what's referred to as a carrier protein that literally helps bring them in through the cell membrane. Did you ever try to zip up a dress and it really wasn't going to zip up and you needed somebody to help you zip it up? That's what those, oh golly. That's what those carrier proteins do. Okay, they help molecules get across. And then there are some other molecules that are so special, they need help, but they have their own channels. Like glucose is very special. Glucose has its own channel. Nothing else can, because glucose is a relatively big molecule. And so in order to get in the cell, it's going to need help, but it's so special, it has its own channel. Doesn't necessarily need a carrier protein because those channels, like right here, these channels allow glucose to go through. Okay? Nothing else can go through it, just glucose. Yes, like the red carpet. Okay? And they're specific. So those are all of the different types of protein on that cell membrane. 7:25. Okay, questions so far? Okay, those were all the proteins in the cell membrane. Now, there's also carbohydrates in the cell membrane. Only 3% of the cell membrane weight is made of carbohydrates. Most of the weight of the cell membrane is proteins. There are a whole bunch of them. There's proteoglycans, glycoproteins, glycolipids, yada, 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 yada. The carb portion of these molecules extends to the outer surface of the membrane, and they form a layer called the glycocalyx. And I put that in blue because there is a question about it on the test, okay? So on the outside of the cell membrane, there is a layer of carbs called the glycocalyx. Here are all the functions of that layer of glycocalyx. They're there for lubrication and also to protect the cell membrane. Molecules are going to be going in and out of that cell membrane. You don't want any friction there. It'll damage the phospholipid bilayer. So these glycocalyx, this layer will help with lubrication so molecules can easily go in and out. This layer also helps anchor to other cells, but if this is a moving cell with the cell membrane, it's going to help it move. So this is where flagella will come out of. Okay, so this is going to help it move. There are special receptors on here for anything that other than what the protein's already taking in. To be very honest, I don't know what any of those are off the top of my head, so don't worry about it. And their other job is to tell your immune system, it's us, remember us, we're normal, we're supposed to be here. Yes, there's the protein molecules that are the name tags, but your glycocalyx is just kind of backup. It's like, yeah, come on now, don't be destroying me. I belong here. This is important so that you don't attack your own cells. Get an autoimmune disorder. An autoimmune disorder is when your body attacks its own cells. So the glycocalyx, one of its big jobs is to make sure that doesn't happen. Okay? I mean, it still happens in some people, but not in everybody. Is that where we are? Okay, that was the cell membrane. All the things about the cell membrane. Any questions on cell membrane?
Will we need to know specific percentages of the weight?
I don't think so. I'll double check. But if we do, that would be a really dumb thing to know. Ooh, I didn't say that out loud. I don't think so. I can imagine that would be. I hope not. Let's put it that way. All right, let me see. It is 7:30. We got 20 minutes. Just want to see how much I want to get through. Okay. We've got I think I'm going to do 3 slides, and then that actually takes us to a really good stopping point today. So, we're good with that? Mm-hmm. Fabulous. All right. Cytoplasm. This is the part that's jello. And remember I said there's a liquidy portion to it, which is cytosol, and then there's the organelles that sit inside of it. And when you put both of those two things together, they make up what we refer to as cytoplasm. Cytoplasm has a lot of protein in it. And this is where most of the cell reactions take place, is in this cytoplasm.
Most action takes place?
What?
Most of the cells action.
Yeah, like cell reactions.
Oh.
Cellular reactions take place in the cytoplasm. Okay. Cytosol compared to fluid outside the cell. So when it says cytosol versus extracellular fluid means outside the cell. Cytosol is inside the cell. So what is the difference in composition between what's inside the cell and what's outside the cell? First of all, cytosol or cytoplasm inside, really high concentration of potassium, low concentration of sodium. That's going to become important when we talk about the sodium-potassium pump later on. Okay? Cytoplasm also has a higher concentration of proteins inside the cell than outside the cell, and that's mostly because inside the cell you're doing a lot of breaking down of food, so there's going to be a lot of enzymes inside the cell. Little bit of carb inside the cell. Most of it gets broken down pretty quickly so that your body can produce ATP or energy. Outside of the cell, you really shouldn't have any carbs at all. That should all be inside of the cell. And then also in the cytoplasm, there's going to be a lot of stuff that isn't soluble. It's insoluble. Outside of the cell, there should be everything that's soluble.
I don't know if this is important for the test, but I listened to that lady
Yes?
on the thing.
What did
and
she say?
said, know this for the test.
What did she say?
She said important. Sodium versus potassium ions ratio
Mm-hmm.
in a resting cell. Every 3 sodium ions outside of a cell, there are 2 potassium ions inside the cell.
Yep.
So that must be a question.
It is. I was going to do that when we get
Just
to
so everybody knows.
we're going to get to the sodium potassium. I was going to wait and do that when we get to the sodium potassium
Sorry.
pump. No, don't be
But
sorry.
she had it in that part.
Oh, did she?
Yeah, she
Oh.
did. That's why I said it.
Okay, so
Then
let's
video she does?
Yeah. I mean, she just said she doesn't say it very often, but she goes, "This is very
all right, say that again.
important."
Yeah.
Sodium versus potassium ions ratio in a resting cell.
Yep, keep going.
Every 3 sodium ions outside of a cell, there are 2 potassium ions inside the cell.
Okay, so if this is the cell membrane, for every 3 sodium ions outside, there are 2 potassium inside.
Sorry, I didn't.
No,
mean to
I'm
step
glad
on
you- no.
anybody's toes.
Oh, no. I appreciate that.
These tests are crazy.
They are.
Fair.
Okay, good to know. So yes, nobody should miss that question now. All right. I think that is a fantastic place to stop. Because I don't know about you guys, but I'm tired. Everybody looks tired. You look really tired.
We worked the last 2 days.
I'm very tired.
And I've been up all day since I worked all day.
Yeah, your eyes, you just look tired. All right. What questions do you have over either any of the cell parts that I've talked about so far or any of the muscle stuff that I did at the beginning? Anything right now?
Lots of stuff.
Okay. Wednesday night lab, I do believe Wednesday night we will start adding the origin, insertions, and actions for the muscles. So my guess is we probably, I do what Dr. Miklo does, so I go in beforehand to find out how far she goes. But my guess is we'll go back over all the bone markings, go back over all of the muscles, and then we will start doing the origins, insertions, and actions. Okay?
I guess we ain't cleaning the tables.
We can clean the tables. All right.
No, I mean, I guess we ain't.
Why?
Are not.
There's
No paper. Oh, there's like.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, one of you doesn't have to clean the table.
I'll clean. Mine was dirty last time.
There you go. 6 of you can clean the tables. Everybody else, it's time for bed.
Can I see?
Oh yeah, you want to see your, yes,
Yeah.
let me turn this off though so other people can't see. Hmm? This is,
Oh. I did not enjoy it.
oh, I forgot. Does anybody want, I did a coloring page.
Yes. Yes.
Here, take them.
Anything.
There's muscle. If you want a coloring packet of the muscles that we've done so far, there are two that aren't there on there. Fibularis longus and the piriformis are not on that packet.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
An extra one.
But if you want it, it's all yours.
Thank you. Sorry. I love coloring.
Thank you.
Hey, if it helps, I'm happy to do it.
Anything that'll help, man.
Sorry. My brain.